see it's getting darker and darker, and there's just no way right now for these drivers to know exactly what's going to happen.
These guys are going to have to be really, really careful and tiptoe around the track until it's either not even 10 minutes into this race, and I feel like we've got enough strategy going on for a whole event, but still a long, long way to go.
There's Yellowstone, there's Yosemite, but for racing fans and for Grid Life's Elkhart Classic, the destination is Road America, the National Park of Speed.
Free ride in the front of the field here. Look at the wheel tab up the inside for the race leaders. We head down to the first corner.
And these guys have no idea what they're coming into. Look at this field. They're 2 wide, 3 wide, a couple places slipping.
Side by side for the race lead. 54, 48 through 3 and 4. Working lap number 60, 110 laps to go. Yusuf Ghali power move to the bottom of the racetrack, making the short way work. They're going to touch down the hill. This will be a great run for Fuller here.
Yeah, typically ran off the track in the final quarter of that lap 4 to get a massive.
Here he comes.
Does he have a look?
Oh, big block there by Sanfilippo. Into the grass goes Ben Fuller through turn 1, and Sanfilippo hangs on. He's loose. No! And he crashes hard in the exit of turn number 2. Don't try here, boys. They're going to do it. Briscoe backs out. They touch. They're going to crash. Briscoe going to slam the attenuator hard into the wall, and Jared Teston hits him as well. And big damage on these cars. That's huge.
Number 4, people are struggling for grip, going out of every single lane, even trying to then run. It's getting really insane.
Powered by AWS for the Intercontinental GT Challenge, powered by Pirelli at the Indianapolis 8-hour. We are 7 hours and 18 minutes into this 8-hour event. John Miller way deep on the brakes to the inside of turn number 1 and 2. The spin, the 3 car gets turned around in the front of the car. James Howden looking for a place to go, but he's got Austin Cobb to the inside. A bit of a gap behind. I think that's about 15th or 16th spot as they come out of turn 3. Big slide off of this. Getting a run. He's got it. Going to be a drag racing line. Final corner. Checkered flag waving. Here they come. At Virginia National Raceway. To the line. Thompson, Darling, door to door. Banging doors. Fender to fender. I can't believe what we just saw.
Long Beach has played the host to many series over the years. Formula One, IndyCar, recently IMSA Racing has taken to the streets of Long Beach, and that's exactly what we got lined up here for tonight with the LMP2 cars here at Long Beach. The twisty, tight turns, the hairpin, the fountain, all the famous corners coming up to you live in just a little bit. My name is Finney Kuna here with Tom McGorn for SCRS LazyRocket, the Prototype Challenge. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we got lined up here as we cut down to take a look at the track map and see what we have featured here at Long Beach. So coming down, flying down the front straightaway, a little bit of a crest heading down into turn 1 and then through the famous fountain section, Tom.
Yeah, good night, Finian. And for a track that is so tight and so confined, it does have quite a bit of personality. That very tight first sector at turns 1 and then into the fountain turn at turns 2 and 3. A very tight, confined exit of turn 4. Then it finally breezes up, hopping the curb at turn 5. A little bit of a run into turn 6 and 7. Turn 8 gets you out of the back straightaway, potentially a great passing opportunity down into turn 9, and then deep on the brakes into the ever tricky decreasing radius, turn 10 into turn 11. And the trick for tonight is not only do you have to perform on a quick 15-minute sprint, but then you have to perform on a 45-minute feature race with 1 pit stop. So very different profiles of races, as always, here in the LazyRocket Prototype Challenge for these drivers to attack.
Yeah, absolutely. We're cutting down trackside to the action. Drivers already out on the track for qualifying. Just underway. I think some of the drivers have gone down their first lap times here. We'll take a look at that. Currently, DJ Alessandrini, again, no surprise to see his name near the top of the standings, doing very well as always. Paul Darling second. Actually, no, Zach Buchanan just went to second place.
Yeah, Alessandrini swept the round at Laguna Seca last week, both in the sprint race and the feature. Somehow made his way from 25th on the grid all the way back to first in that 45-minute feature. Here he is, again, delivering a stellar lap. He led practice with a 1:11.4. A 1:11.3 on his first lap here in qualifying, so that's a really strong lap. Now brings it down to a 1:11.1. Buchanan, after a really strong performance a little bit ago in the support race, the Super Trofeo series with the Lamborghinis, he is keeping DJ on his toes tonight. But another driver that's always been a big factor is Paul Darling. He sits third at that 1:11.8, and while he may not have had the consistency to start this season off, that driver in the 155 is kind of considered a P2 specialist by many, and I think it's just a matter of time before he really puts a hurt on this field. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get up there. And then finally, in fourth, Syandra is back after putting on a very stellar performance in our first round at Daytona. He, in fact, skipped qualifying and then worked his way from the back of the grid twice up to the front. He seems to be qualifying here, maybe learned his lesson, who knows, here at Long Beach, and is up into fourth position there in that 67 car.
Yeah, and I see him perform very well, and then also cannot leave out Mitch Welker in the 77 machine. Really good in the high downforce cars and the Indy cars, and that translates over very well over to the P2s. Currently sitting in 5th place. Looks like I think he's done for qualifying. I think feels that's the best he can do. I think DJ has finished up his runs as well in these closing minutes. So good to see that. Zach Buchanan as well. Still working down the track. He's been trying to chase DJ down. Couldn't get him last race, and is looking like he might also be settling down his qualifying effort done.
Here's a driver that's had a really interesting season. Carter Kundinger in the 0-2. He has been a driver that has kind of had poor luck in the sprint races, and we'll get to the format in a second, but in the sprint races, when you have bad luck, if you finish in the top 25, you benefit from a top 25 car invert, and that means that you have the opportunity to start much further ahead and start at the front of that feature race. And Kundinger has benefited from that not once but twice this season. He won at Daytona because of that situation. He got second place last week at Laguna Seca after Alessandrini was able to catch up and make a late race move on him. I'm sure he doesn't love that strategy. It's not like it's worth throwing away the sprint race or anything as far as championships are concerned, but he has certainly benefited from it twice, and we'll see if he can maybe for the first time this season put together a really strong sprint and be one of the top performers, because you see him there in the 8th position. He ain't slow.
No, it's definitely not slow at all here. As qualifying coming to a close, just about 2 minutes left. Carter Kundinger, ooh, nice time, jumps up to 4th place.
That's a great run, and you can see the top grouping of 6 are all cars in the 111s. You're totally right. Welker's not one to forget about either. And Mo Islam, who sits 7th, he's in the first car in the 112s. He's been really strong this season too, on pace and finishing results. Maybe a little less consistent than some of the cars around him, but that car is also from the AOD Purple team. They're really that driver's really quick as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for most part, most of the other cars have put down a time. We'll just kind of wait over for qualifying to finish. But, we're talking about coming to Long Beach, and we were just doing the Super Trofeo race and saw those guys. We saw passing. There's one takeaway from that race. You definitely saw passing. Again, not necessarily come at a premium, but definitely be pretty tricky to do. It takes a while. It takes a few laps to pull off. So, what do you think is going to be the biggest difference? We're obviously switching from GT3 machinery to P2. These cars are a lot more agile. You're able to push them a little bit harder in some cases. Do you think you may see some more passing with the change-up in car?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we race these cars in a semi-endurance format. They're going to race on a full fuel stint, at least in that 45-minute race, and they're going to have to make a pit stop as well. So that's the second race we'll see tonight. That's about 20 minutes out. But that is a more natural fit for what these P2 cars are kind of designed for. And I think that this track doesn't necessarily change that for them. Whereas a sprint race, because passing is, I would argue, at a premium, it's really hard to figure out a way past somebody. I think that the sprint race might be a little bit similar to that support race that we had just a little bit ago from Super Trofeo, where it's going to be relatively single file and tough to pick up positions, but every position counts, because again, we invert the top 25 for that feature race, which is again a little more natural for these cars. The other thing is these are downforce cars, and Long Beach is pretty slow, so this is really not necessarily what these cars are designed for. This is a more bull in a china shop, or I don't even know how to say it. It's not a bull in a china shop even. You should have used that for the last race. That would have been perfect, because we had a Lamborghini. That would have been way better. It's almost more a I don't know, jet ski in a bathtub, like Kyle likes to say. It's like the car's just not meant to be where it is.
Okay, I like that better. I think that's definitely a pretty good analogy for these guys.
Well, you know how jet skis don't turn unless you're on throttle, right? So it's kind of like that. These cars don't do anything until they're at speed. So you need that downforce, but how fast can you go before it really takes effect?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll cut down here. We'll cut down to gridding here for prototype challenge, and we'll set your starting lineup in just a little bit. Here we go. DJ Alessandrini, he'll be lining up on pole position. Next to him, Cy Andrew going to be starting in second place. Moving on to third, we find Zach Buchanan in the 40 car. Carter Cunningham going to be lining up in the 02 in fourth place. Moving on to the next row, we find Paul Darling in the 155, looking at seeing how he can do in prototype machinery. I think it's the first time I've seen him in a prototype car, so good to see how he can do. He's a really skilled driver. In sixth, we'll find Mitch Welker. In seventh place, Mo is on the 206 with Isaac Snyder next to him in eighth. And then rounding out your top 12, we cut down to Sean Unterkoffer in the 9. On the inside, Chris Hudson next to him in the 43. Albert Jones in the 13, and Ryan Ford will round out your top 12.
We'll take note of Chris Hudson there. He sits second in the championship based on nice and consistent performances. So even though he starts, what was that, way down in ninth, if he can have good clean runs. Another consideration is we don't have the size of field that we have had for the first two rounds. You see the rows of cars, it's just not as massive a stack up. So I think that will ultimately bode well for the cleanliness of tonight. But what we saw in the sport race with Super Trofeo is that everybody kind of agreed to have a clean race, and it was such. So does this race have the same tone coming to the green flag?
Yeah, I don't think it will. We saw, DJ mentioned in the last race too, not to constantly bring it up, but he immediately took off because that's, the way the rules were. He felt that was the best for him as an advantage. So take a look at the keys of the race, and I put here some question marks with the hairpin and the fountain because we didn't see a whole lot of chaos in both of them. In fact, I don't think we saw a single incident in the hairpin, other than maybe some guys getting a little bit too swung out on the exit, but there was no car-to-car incident in there. And then same thing through the fountain. I don't think we saw a single car-to-car incident.
Yeah, agreed. It takes two to tango, and if the whole field comes to the green flag with the tone of we are not going to crash, those crashes are less likely to happen, but they're coming to that green flag. Does DJ jump the green again?
Yep, he definitely does, and there he's off and away. So is the rest of the field. We are green here at Long Beach for 13 laps, the first race of the night. He's going to have a massive gap. Look at that, 1 second already over Cy Andrew heading down into turn 1.
Huge, and the rest of the field is still pretty strung out. And this is what helped the first green flag back in the support race be very clean, but these drivers are racing. Oh, big dive up the inside for the 13, almost a touch, and they spin. Both of them go around.
Trying to see who that was. Lost track of that. Oh, that's a massive block. Oh, many cars still flying in. We're still green. We'll see if a caution does fly. That was an option, but it looks like no caution will fly, but a lot of cars will be torn up out of turn 1.
Yeah, and those are all cars that are going to be eligible for very far up starting positions on the top 25 invert. Again, a 15-minute-ish sprint here to start the night off, and then a 45-minute with a pit stop. But you're going to see the 13 car about 10 cars back go big dive up the inside, side by side, up the inside of the 43. Goes for the position, loses the rear end under braking, and hip checks the 43. Both of them go around into the tires, and then it's just a total roadblock.
Yeah, and guys are flying in here. Again, they might have seen a yellow flag, but you don't know where everyone's sitting. It's a blind corner up ahead. And some were lucky able to slow it down. Some were lucky to get a little bit of scuffs of damage. But for Chris Hudson, I think it's going to be retirement, and that's major for the points.
Look at the suspension damage on the 43. Just couldn't get going, even to get back to the pit lane. So you can bet there's a tow for that car in its future. But Alessandrini has a nice clear gap over Cy Andrew in the 67. And one thing we didn't get to talk about is necessarily the... Ooh.
Sorry to cut you off. Carter Cunningham just tag the tire barriers coming out of turn 1. I don't think he did a whole lot of damage, but almost had Zach Buchanan. For some reason they're out of order. Zach Buchanan almost come flying into him.
No, you're right. That was a big hip check, and luckily it was the tires, and these cars are fairly sturdy. But what I was going to mention is the draft on that front straightaway, because these cars are so downforce reliant, and this is a fixed setup with a relatively high amount of downforce. The draft is actually pretty significant down that front straightaway. So if you're within touch of the car in front, which as we ride on board with the 40 of Zach Buchanan, you can see he's very close. He's within drafting distance, but Alessandrini and Andrew are both out of touch, not only with each other but with the rest of the field.
Yeah, this back straightaway, not probably the most ideal place. You can definitely get a solid tow if you're close enough. And I'll definitely see Buchanan here, especially this run out of the hairpin. You can take many lines through here, but you got to be careful, especially on the throttle. You saw some tire smoke. This guy's just stepping on the gas and trying to allow the throttle, the traction control to take care of all the rest. But here we see Zach Buchanan right up the exhaust of the 02 Carter Cunningham. Will pull out side by side. Here we go into turn 1. Who's going to be deeper on the brakes? Buchanan going to try to swing around the outside. Gets a little bit wide, almost clips the tire barrier, but is going to have to settle for third.
There's a great indication of how strong that draft is. Buchanan was absolutely alongside Kundinger coming into the braking zone at turn 1, so I think staying in touch with someone to be in the draft of the front straightaway is going to be critical for tonight. The top 2, you see them, they're gone. Kundinger, Buchanan, Darling, Welker, and Islam all running in formation, that 5, basically battling for 3rd. That thing is not going anywhere. That battle is really hot.
Yeah, you saw our 2 leaders checking out. There's the rest of the field, especially that. Oh no! Heard a little bit of clanking in behind. Not sure who tagged the wall, but someone might have picked up some more damage. Again, you can tag the wall a little bit here and there, but you don't want to tag it too many times. These cars can only take so much. And it's especially dependent on where you hit the car. You want to make sure you don't hit the tires, damage the suspension and the handling of these things, because you need as much handling as you can get your hands on. And looking at Mitch Welker sitting in behind in 6th, he's also another driver looking at advancing up the order.
Yeah, you really do, and especially with this grid, with this race setting up the grid for our feature race that is coming in a little bit less than 10 laps time, you do have a little bit of an out if you blow this one, but in the feature race, you got to be perfect because that race has no outs. Again, that top 25 invert, which is essentially the whole field here, if you blow this one, you can kind of make it up in the second one, and that's what Kundinger's been able to do 2 for 2 this season. But in general, if you're out in the feature, you're just out.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it really depends on how bad the damage or how bad your night's ruined, but more or less, as you mentioned, you're pretty much out at that point. So see, especially for Chris Hudson, I'm sure he's going to be looking at that. That's his chance at redemption. Saw some decent pace in the car, obviously qualified in the top half of the order, but not going to have a good finish, at least in the sprint race. So we'll see if the feature will be a little kinder to him. Still looking at Carter Kundinger, trying to hold off everyone in behind. And what do you think is the best advice for Carter Kundinger at this point? Because you see he's building up a solid train of 4 or 5 cars.
Well, I agree that he may appear that he's holding up the field, as it looks like almost Paul Darling might have tagged the wall coming out of the hairpin, but I think that this car is really quick, and it's nothing but this draft on the front straightaway that's keeping the rest of the field with him. As you see, Buchanan is getting ever so slightly closer down this front straightaway, and it really exaggerates once that front straightaway straightens out. And indeed, Darling might have tagged that wall. He's under attack. Welker around the outside picks up the wall as well. Hip checks. They're still side by side in the fountain. Contact between the 2.
Guys, door bang here at Long Beach. Someone might want to tell them they're not in stock cars. They're getting a little physical with each other, and that was just Welker just not wanting to give the spot. Again, the passing is going to be tough to do. Had a really solid shot, tried to keep in it, got some wall, got some car as well, but he's going to still be back in 6th.
That's a good hold on position, but they lost a ton of time to the cars in front. So Kundinger, Buchanan are gone as well for 3rd. This is Darling, Welker, Islam, and Snyder, as Islam has now joined this battle, and he's been really quick in the P2 cars. Maybe not as consistent as some of the other cars around him, but he is absolutely within touch of a top 5. Yes, that becomes a bottom 20 car on the grid for the next race, but you still want to do as well as you can. See him run a little bit wide there off the back straightaway at turn 9 and lose touch with the hairpin, but Darling is now rallying from that mistake out of the hairpin the previous lap.
Yeah, it's a lot. You can see up ahead, Carter Kundinger and Zach Buchanan have kind of taken off after Darling and Welker went side by side. That slowed them down quite a bit by almost a second or two. The last lap they were on through, and Zach Buchanan also looked like he had a little bit of a look on Carter Kundinger, but the draft probably not as strong as Buchanan would like at the moment.
Potentially, but Buchanan has also had really good long race pace. He's been able to deliver really solid laps deep into the feature races, which are 45 minutes long. So if he can just kind of hang there, he's going to get a lot of goes at this. He's got 8 more tries, and even still, just sticking there in that 4th position is going to be a good finish. But here at the front, Syandra, who was a little bit of an unknown for us coming into Daytona, proved to be super, super quick. He led practice, didn't qualify at all, and I think that was on purpose. He did qualify here tonight, and that gap to Alessandrini has come down by about half. It was 1.4 seconds a couple laps ago. It's only 5/10 now, and that 67 is looking super strong. Yeah,
and I was going to say the lap before that, actually, before he had a little bit of a flash and it changed the lap time. Andrew ran a 111.6 last time through to a DJ. As you can see there, 111.8. I'm sure it's going to even be less this time through 111.6 this time for Alessandrini, and I think Andrew said a 111.1. Almost 5/10, actually is 5/10 faster than Alessandrini, so he's caught up. He's pretty much right there now.
Faster and in the draft, so this one for the last 7 laps is not going to be a walk the park for Alessandrini as he might be used to from last week at Laguna Seca. He's got a big pressure from behind with Andra, who is again a weapon in these P2 cars, and there's catching up to some lap traffic. That could be a factor as well.
Yeah, trying to see who that is up ahead. I believe that is Eric Brown in the 56 car. I think he had some trouble at some point in the race earlier. He started back in 20th, is currently in 18th, so he hasn't gone too much anywhere, but he's going to have to look in his mirrors a little bit and see if the leaders are coming up on him quickly.
Well, I suspect that was the purple car we saw pile into the incident in turn 1 very late.
That probably
so
was.
he's probably been through the pits and is rejoined with a repaired Dallara, but this battle for second is also hot. Kundinger still defending on Buchanan. Darling has rallied and rejoined them and kind of left Welker in the dust, but then I think this is going to compress back down to another 5-6 car battle.
Everyone taking slightly different lines through the hairpin. You can take many different lines. I guarantee you all of them will feel wrong.
Yeah.
I remember doing a race here earlier, about an hour race. I kept trying to change the line through the hairpin. None of them felt right. I think the best one you can try to get, especially seeing how effective that draft is, you want to try to maximize that exit speed, but it's so hard to do because you have to try to get back on the power as soon as you can, and the traction control kicks in. And you're just hearing as the car is trying to gain traction.
You're absolutely right, and I think something that the camera doesn't translate is just how bumpy it is when you get close to the inside wall, and most of the slower cars don't really care so much, even up to GT3 cars, but here in the prototype cars, they just don't have a lot of compliance, and when you get on those big bumps, they don't want to put power down, so you either are bogging the power, or you're hopping in the air, and then the car spins up. A big incident for Buchanan.
Big is an understatement. Hard in the wall for Buchanan. I think that's going to be it for tonight, or at least sorry for this race. I don't know what to see how that car is handling. I can't imagine well. That was a massive hit.
That was a big, and it looks like he might have just got away from him on the brakes, was in too deep, and again, relying on the mechanical grip for a downforce-driven car, it's easy to just get in too hot as he came through the exit of turns 6 and 7 into 8. You're going to see him up under the rear end of Kundinger, and we'll see how this played out.
Here is right where it happened, coming into this corner. Maybe turned a little bit too late, turned too early. Oh, nope. Yeah, it turned too early, hit the wall.
Man, and then just goes for a blender ride as everybody else collects him. Luckily, he didn't think it affected many other people around him, but he's back down. Interestingly, not a massive loss. 8th.
So definitely didn't get a meatball, didn't have to come to pit road to get required repairs. So that guy, I think he figured might as well stay out here. I mean, I don't blame him, might as well stay out here because, you know, you might think, you know, might as well just come down to the pits and get set up well for the next race. But you get really valuable points, and that's the beauty of the system. You can try to put yourself all the way back there and set yourself up nice for the feature race, but you're going to lose out on a lot of championship points, and that's what Buchanan's worried about at the moment. Oh, I think Mo Islam, might have ran into some trouble. I think I just saw it exchange for position.
Yeah, it looks like it is Isaac Snyder got the position away from Mo Islam, and now they both look at the back of Paul Darling, who was the beneficiary of that whole incident. He was the one that didn't even get collected in the incident, as he was ahead of Buchanan when that happened. No, he's got damage too. Look at that car crabbing down the front straightaway. Mo Islam decides to hit pit lane.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. That car doesn't look too terribly bad. I see something on the right side, but yeah, want to go back to... maybe it's worse than we thought. It looks like the right side's hurting a bit, but going back to, I think it was Paul Darling, the one with big damage, is the front. We see the front of the car now. Yeah, that left front not looking pretty. You can see the wheel actually exposed. So that car is not. It's definitely seen better days, and I think Snyder knows that, and he's trying to take advantage.
Yeah, he definitely should be able to. You can see that car is just crabbing down the straightaways. It's not tracking straight at all. It was Welker. I was mistaken. It was Welker that benefited mostly from that incident. I think he was the one that got through scot-free. And now Isaac Snyder, big protection from Darling, tries to protect onto the back straightaway and actually gets it done. Snyder could have forced that issue a little bit more, but decided to go gentle on Darling. Maybe sees him floundering like a one-legged duck paddling in the pond, and knows that he might have another shot at this one.
Yeah, let's take a look at Snyder. Sorry, not Snyder. This is Paul Darling's onboard. What is curious to see how bad the steering is. It comes out of the hairpin. We'll see him have to go straight a little bit here. Oh yeah, that's not ideal. That's how it's supposed to be, and that's how it currently is for Paul Darling. He's holding it. Actually, he's still turning left while the car is going right. And Snyder, actually side by side, here we go into turn number 1, easily going to blow on by. And you can see just with the damage to how much arrow-wise he's hurting on the straightaways, the thing dragging like crazy. Easy pass for Snyder.
Yeah, Darling seems to have a lot of confidence in the corners of the car, so it may not be that bad, but the straight line speed is terrible in the 155, and good news for him is that there's only 3 laps left. He might be able to fend off Buchanan and the rest behind that are catching him, but that 155 is in bad shape. Snyder picks up a position for the top 5.
Yeah, you're talking about Mitch Welker, biggest beneficiary of that whole ordeal, up from 6th to 4th place, and Welker has got cleaner up ahead to Carter Kundinger. And the battle up ahead, nothing much has really happened of it. Andrea has arrived to Alessandrini, and nothing much has really happened. In fact, the gap's actually expanded out a little bit, almost a second now between these two. And I guess if I'm Andrew, I don't blame him. I wouldn't really, there's not too much of a deal forcing the issue. I mean, obviously you want as many points as possible, but... Oh no! And he forced the issue into the tire burrs. He's actually stuck!
Unbelievable. You were just saying not a lot of issue to push, not a lot of pressure to push that hard, but he was clearly on the limit and has to tow back to pit lane, which means that Cy Andra will likely inherit a almost might as well be a front row start in the feature race. But he was just in position to put pressure on Alessandrini. Alessandrini now has completely clear mirrors.
Oh man, if there's not commentator's curse, I don't know who there's from that. On cue, just a little bit too hard. Brakes locked it up around the car, went and stuck in the barrier.
That's a surprise too, because these cars are not necessarily known to lose it on entry like that. So that might have been, that's a very bizarre incident coming into turn 1. Maybe he had a lot of rear brake bias or something.
I think that could be it, just pushing too hard. As we mentioned, I was just saying not to do, unfortunately, for Andrew. So close to the end as well. It's 2 laps to go this time by. Now 1 lap to go. White flag in the air for DJ Alessandrini. Has absolutely no competition from behind. He can just kind of cruise. He's got 10 seconds back to Carter Kundinger, who's going to be surprised to find himself inheriting 2nd place. Mitch Welker going to finish the 3rd step of the podium.
Yeah, and if Kundinger can hold it there, he's in great position to break the streak of poor sprint races in the benefit of great feature races. The question is, does he have the same ability to climb through the field as the other drivers? Because I think he started top 5 in both feature races this season. This is the first time that he would start in the bottom 5, really. Now Buchanan has caught the floundering Darling, and Darling is doing everything he can. Look at him protect down into turn 1.
Battle of the cripples is really between Paul Darling and Zach Buchanan. Both these cars with decent amount of damage. Buchanan's actually been able to hold off Unterkuffer and the 38 of Derek in behind. So these two guys have not been too much of a threat to Buchanan, but I think for Darling, he's got to struggle a lot more to hold off 3 of these guys for another half a lap. Down the straightaway and with the draft, Buchanan was almost 10 miles an hour faster than Darling. He's not going to have the benefit, though. They're not going to have access to that straightaway because the start-finish line is early. So Darling can hold off to the hairpin. I think he should be good here.
Well, this straightaway is the bad news because this is a fairly high-speed straightaway, and he's put it in exactly in the center of the track. Buchanan shows the nose at the inside, but defends on the brakes. I think Darling has held the outside, which becomes the inside here. He has the point. Can he get a good run off the hairpin is the critical point. Yeah,
here we go into that hairpin. Might see something happen here. He gets punted out of the way, and they're stopped. Stopped in the hairpin. They finally get on through, and it looks like Buchanan's going to show a good sign of sportsmanship, going to give the spot back to Darling. Darling will finish in 5th. Zach Buchanan in 6th. Sean Unterkuffer in 7th. And actually, Derek in the 38 is going to come home in 8th. No, he's going to come home in 9th. Colin Danner is able to get a decent enough run to beat him to the line for that 8th place spot.
Gentleman move from Buchanan, because that was not the move that you want to see happen there in the hairpin. And for Darling to finish in the top 5 with about 15 degrees of steering angle, left hand down on that 155 car is just unreal. But a massive win for Alessandrini. He will invert to the back of the grid for race 2. Carter Kundinger breaks the streak of poor sprint races for 2nd. Mitch Welker benefits all the way up to 3rd.
Yeah, and then looking back, Isaac Snyder's been able to pick up some decent scraps up into 4th place. Paul Darling, I'm again amazed that he's able to hold on to that machine for nearly half the race and bring it back home in 5th. And again, props to Zach Buchanan for like we said, a good show of sportsmanship just to let him get back on. He knew it was a mistake, tough dive, but a really solid finish.
It's always a tricky thing coming into that hairpin, because if you can show the nose like that and feint the guy into giving you the room, you can make it, but in general that person is kind of on their own line and committed. So I think we saw a lot of people learn things in this shorter race. Now what did they do with the information coming into the 45-minute feature with a pit stop included? These cars, again, more natural in a longer race, but the whole field I think will be inverted. that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, pretty much. There was an adjustment to the rules. They're no longer inverting the entire grid as it was before, only the top 25. But as you mentioned, we have had less than 25 spotters, so essentially it's going to be a full field invert. And it was interesting too because we thought with the dump stuff that these guys have been getting, field getting relatively spread out, we thought we were going to see a nice clean opening lap, but we saw a pile up in turn 1. With this feature race, obviously you guys have significantly more time to work with, almost 3 times the distance. You think we're going to see that level of aggression that could lead to an opening lap incident, or you think these guys might have learned their lesson?
Well, the opportunity is high for sure. I think we may definitely see an incident like that, but I also have to wonder, the couple of cars that were involved in those incidents early on, I remember, I don't know the driver names, but the 13 car and the 43 car both were involved with that. Those cars were in the top 10. There's a number of other cars that had incidents throughout that race. They have the opportunity to break free of the field pretty early in this one, and you can lose a ton of time in traffic here because there's just so little opportunity for passing. And we saw that work out really well for Kundinger back at Daytona when he started in the top 4 and broke away from the field. So I think we may get this one turned on its head big time.
Yeah, and these guys do have a pit stop to make. I'm curious because I've only followed bits and pieces of this series. Have guys been pitting for tires? I'm just curious if they have. I'll be a bit surprised if they were.
No, no tires, but people are definitely flirting with the line with fuel. We've seen drivers miss the pit boxes. We've seen drivers underfill their car as well. So I think spending as little time as possible sitting still in pit lane is honestly one of the best ways to make up positions here at Long Beach, because passing is at such a premium on the track. If you can stick with somebody but pass them in the pit lane, that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, it's usually what a lot of race strategists look at, especially in Formula 1. You can't pass them on track, pass them in the pits with some pit strategy. And again, there isn't really anything to do with tire strategy for these guys. They all have the same compound tires and not changing them. But when you can come down to get your guys, as you mentioned, it's going to be very important to get yourself in some cleaner to work with. So we'll see how guys will try to use that to their advantage here as we got warm-up. You guys warming up for the features. Cut down to the track just for a little bit just to see what's going on with these guys, but really solid opening race. There was some really close stuff, especially near the front. Curious to see if we can have Andra get a little bit closer to DJ.
Yeah, he's going to be, I think, probably the best of anybody as far as inheriting a good starting position after that self-incident down in turn 1. I think the other thing that we may see, I have to wonder, is the big brain move to pit as early as possible. A lot of times the drivers are staying out as late as they possibly can in their first fuel stint, taking their pit stop as late as possible, and then rejoining the race for a very short run to the checkered flag. But I think because passing is so hard here, we might see some of those drivers that are starting at the back who did well in the sprint race pit very early rather than pit very late. It's going to be a very game time call, and strategy's big in this race.
Yeah, and really this is going to probably, maybe not, most people won't get this reference, what I'm referring to, but this is really, I think, the way this is going to play out. It's a lot of you guys are going to use this almost like a joker lap, what you would use in rallycross, just to get yourself with some clean track and just to come on in, get yourself, as you said, in the back of the pack, and the best place to do that is early as possible. So just go maybe 5-10 minutes into the race, come on down to pit road, fill up on the gas as much as you need, and then come back out and you got a bunch of open racetrack to work with. Sure, you may have to pass some of the back markers on the track, which may be an issue, but there is also that invert, so some of the faster guys will be towards the back. So there's a lot of factors here that these guys have to weigh in if they want to come in early or later.
Yeah, you're totally right. It is essentially a forced joker lap with the minimized, they kind of cut down the fuel percentage that is allowed in the cars, and also you see a number of drivers practicing that pit entry, which is very tight here at Long Beach. You got to thread the needle into that pit lane because, I mean, this is essentially a public road. If you've ever been to Long Beach, California, you're driving on drivers right down the pit lane, and drivers left on the street is the front straightaway. So it's very small, but practicing that pit in is going to be important too.
Taking a look from a blimp here as we end the warm-up period here, and we'll get ready to set up the grid here in just a few moments. Here we go. We'll get down to the grid and get ready to get this race underway. Is there any driver in particular that you're looking forward to that may be near the front now?
Well, I think it's definitely Syandra. depending on where he grids after that incident. Because he had to tow, I suspect he might be in the top 2 to 4 cars.
Yeah, I'm looking at him. He should be scheduled to start in 7th place.
7th, okay, so more incidents than I expected in that first race, actually, but he's definitely got the biggest opportunity to run away as early as he possibly can. The other thing is, we've seen Alessandrini be on pole in both the support race and the feature race here with the Super Trofeos and the Prototype Challenge. Now we have a totally different pole.
Sorry to cut you off real quick. I noticed something that everyone's gridded except for the first 7 cars, and I don't think there's a coincidence for that. I think these guys are trying to save fuel. And now it looks like they're all coming onto the grid right now.
We also tend to see a number of EOL penalties assigned to different drivers who choose to start at the back. And perhaps instead of EOLs, maybe they start from pit lane today.
See how that plays out here as the field off and rolling for the pace side. And we've seen DJ in the Super Trofeo race and had control of the race 1. We'll see here what the leaders decide to do. They don't have to go immediately. In fact, I remember DJ letting the pace car go out a little bit ahead to get these guys from getting stacked up. This leader has not. And this should be an interesting start. Guys getting bunched up, and we're going to have a bunched up start heading to turn 1. This is going to get dicey real quick. We're green here at Long Beach for race 2.
This is a way bigger stack up than we've seen in both the support and the feature, but the 12 car, the pole sitter in the middle of the track defending, we're almost 3 wide, but it's the 144. Is that Mo Islam, I think, maybe attacking up for the first position side by side of the hairpin. This is tight.
This is a traffic jam. It's just like it is during a normal day, and unfortunately, Derek in the 30, he's going to go flying around.
Contact on the back of Alessandrini as well. He got hit. Everybody else through cleanly.
I'm sure it's going to be a sigh of relief, but still not over yet. Everyone's still fairly bunched up close together here, working through the first half of a lap. Now coming on to the backstretch, Ryan Cadwell, who's, I believe, the effective leader of the race, coming on through. Brian Chabelski in 2nd, Corey Bunch in 3rd, Kyle Lamb in 4th, and Drew Litke rounding out your top 5.
Yeah, so I misspoke. It was Chabelski that took the pole from the green flag, but Caldwell, it wasn't Islam, it was Caldwell that took the lead up the inside of turn 1, and it's now starting to break away. Interesting, it looks like basically the top 7 all starting from pit lane. We'll see if they even join the race. But again, it was contact between Alessandrini and Welker, 2 of our top cars on the track, as now we're going majorly, and gets turned.
Indeed he does, and another big incident, major players involved, and up and over goes Sean Unterkuffler.
Oof.
See how oh wow, these guys are really going at it back here. This is a little bit before that incident happened. You see up the inside, that was Paul Darling up the middle 3 wide, and these guys came to the hairpin, still 2 by 2 by 2. And another traffic jam occurs out into the hairpin, into the fountain, and then into the hairpin. He hit the tire barrier. Everyone had to take evasive action. Mitch Welker came and finished him off. That's a teammate and sent him up and over.
Wow, Unterkuffler actually led into the hairpin and just missed it. He went nose into the tires, and Darling got hit from the outside and somehow got spun around anyway. Buchanan's also sitting still in the pit lane. We didn't see what happened with him, but he is stationary on the pit lane as well. I think we have, what is it, close to half the field right now stationary sitting on the pit lane after this first lap, which has been a disaster for many drivers, but Caldwell leads the way, and I think Alessandrini might be clear through, other than that contact with Mitch Welker.
He's currently up into 8th place at the moment. Cy Andrew, he's not had a good start to his race. He had the advantage starting up in 7th place. I think it might have even been closer to the front than that, but was involved in some incidents. He's all the way back in 17th place, so it's been a messy start for a lot of the guys you expect in the front. There's Cy Andrew right now working his way on through. There's also Mitch Welker not too far behind as well. No, it's not Mitch Welker. Sorry, that is another car. I believe it's Eric. There's Eric Brown. I was looking at the sun making the maroon look, making the purple look like maroon, like Mitch Welker's car. But Ryan Cadwell up in front in 1st place, leading over Chabelski, Kyle Lamb, Corey Bunch, and then Drew Litke. So not much has changed for this top 5, but here comes DJ Alessandrini, his Red Bull machine, working his way on through.
Well, check out the gap that those top 2 have. They're really starting to check out, and again, the longer that you stay out, the more traffic you have to deal with. This is maybe that situation where you take that quote-unquote joker lap, you take the pit stop as early as possible for someone like Alessandrini or Kundinger, who are both up into the top 10, but they're going to have to deal with some of these slower cars. I think one of the other strong starters is Mo Islam, who's up to 5th in the 206 car. But again, all of these guys are going to have to navigate traffic, which is just so hard here at Long Beach, and maybe you pit early to get it out of the way.
Yeah, and I'm curious how many guys are. I think for DJ, I think if I was him, that's what I would be definitely looking at doing. He's got a lot of cars up ahead that, he's going to have to pass at some point if he wants to have a shot at the win, better yet to pit. And also, you have to think, too, you have to also kind of do a little bit of reverse psychology. If everyone pits, then you're kind of in the same situation you started with. Oh, you saw a big lockup from someone. I think they got through. I think it was Corey Bunch in the 93. But if everyone pits, there's no point in pitting. So you have to be careful with that as well.
It is definitely a big gamble. There was a car that went in. It was this one here.
Yes, that is. Sorry, I'm trying to pull something else up. Kyle Lamb in the 42. He just completely missed the corner. We'll take a look at what happened to him.
By himself, big lockup, and went straight
off. On
off.
through. Rather than Andra trying to make the corner and hitting the tie bar, he decided to just avoid it and just get the car straightened back out. Problem is that put him all the way back in 14th place.
And he, I think, was up in the top 5 from 14th, so he's basically undone all of his damage. But that's more typical of what we see on corner entry from these P2 cars, is a front tire lockup, and you just got to bail out. So Andra's incident's still a bit of a mystery for me, but now this driver has a long way to go for the remaining 30 laps of this one.
Absolutely. And sorry, I was trying to restart the ticker discrepancy. Sorry if everything disappeared from the screen. Give it 1 sec to fire back up as we got everyone coming back through. Was trying to get the gaps to work again. But yeah, so Gladwell and Shabelsky looking pretty good. There we go. Looking pretty strong at the moment. But as they're working their way on through, what do you think are their shots? We haven't seen too much of them. How has Gladwell been throughout the rest of this series?
Well, he's been pretty quiet, and I do think I'm going to be paying very close attention to raw pace because there are so few cars left circulating on the lead lap. I think raw pace is going to be really critical tonight. So yes, between Caldwell and Alessandrini, who is he showing an 8? I don't know if he's showing an 18th for real or if that's a ticker issue. But anyway,
no, he's not for real because he's in the pits.
Oh, interesting. I wondered if the pit window opened early enough that he might be completing this pit stop on purpose. We didn't see an incident. Maybe the pit window for this race is massive.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be fairly short. This is a little shorter, as you mentioned, a little shorter than I would have thought. So DJ getting service to his car, although he's been in there for quite a while. Maybe this is not for the pits, because he's been in there for almost 40 seconds. No, he's definitely not. It's definitely been damaged. Hang on, let's see if we could find what happened to DJ.
Yeah, if he had pit this early. Oh, he got turned at the hairpin, I think. Maybe.
It was turn 1.
Power down. No, okay. Yeah, turn 1.
I think we actually just took a step away to look at Collateral up ahead, and this is what happened in behind, heading down at turn 1. Not sure if he overshot. I don't think anyone would have hit him from behind. Came on through. Oh, hit the car up ahead that hit the wall, the tire barriers, and then looks like Paul Darling ended up finishing him off.
I think that was Ryan Plord that ended up tagging the tires. And what's interesting here is this is not the first time tonight that we've seen the car that made the first incident be the beneficiary of it, really, because if you remember back to the first incident, Paul Darling in the sprint race was the car that collected the car that had made the mistake, and he was the one that paid for it, not the car that made the initial mistake. Now Alessandrini was the one that came across the incident for Plord and pays a big price for it. I think that might rule him out for this one.
Here comes Mitch Welker. I'm sure he's going to be licking his chops now. DJ's out of this race, and as far as really the top 6, I would say Welker's probably got one of the strongest cars of the bunch. He's just got to make it through the traffic now. Sitting up in 7th place, he's got about, I want to say about 5 or so seconds. I'm losing the gaps on my thing as well, so I think I need to restart the program in a little bit. But as you see, Welker all the way right up to the bumper. He's being pretty aggressive.
He is, but he's just got to be patient. I think he really needs to wait until that pit window opens, which I was suspecting to be closer to maybe lap 15 to 20. I think the pit stop window will be right around maybe lap 12 to 24, somewhere in that mid-range of the race. I was going to be shocked if it was early enough for Alessandrini to be completing his pit stop, and we know now that he was not. But I think the more patient Welker can be now, he will pay off for just waiting, getting that pit stop out of the way and gaining some positions. We know he's likely the fastest car in the top 7.
I think this is the driver that has I think has the best shot of making it to the end at the moment. Syandra is the earliest driver, or the highest running driver that is pit so far, has come in for 10 seconds. I'm pretty sure that's as much fuel as they need, 10 seconds worth. That sounds about right. So he's leading the run of cars, and that includes Syandra, Chris Hudson, who, remember, had a big incident in race number 1. He's running right in behind. Corey Meadows and Eric Brown. Everyone else is with pretty significant damage, is pretty much out of the running. Sean Unterkoffler, notably, he's back on the track. They whipped out the backup car because the other one is damaged of being upside down, so he's back out in 17th. DJ is also back out on the track, but is, I think, almost a lap down, if not a lap down or two, running 18th.
Well, wouldn't that be a feat if Syandra was able to come back? And again, Chris Hudson is another quiet driver that we haven't really necessarily talked about as a massive storyline as far as race battles go here and there, but he sits second in the championship, and he's the car that's right behind Syandra. And I think you mentioned he had just completed a pit stop, correct?
Yes, he did. So, I think
maybe those two are really in a great spot.
Yeah, I think they are, and that's what we're looking at. So I'm curious to see where Syandra is going to end up here, as you see DJ working his way on through the fountain. Just trying to pick up scraps at this point. I'm sure he's going to be disappointed because that was pretty much no fault of his own, but unfortunately, Long Beach doesn't care.
Yeah, absolutely true. Can bite whenever, and you can't expect it. Mitch Welker is another car that's in a great position. He sits 4th. And he picked up, wasn't he just in 7th? Did he just pick up a bunch of positions on the last lap?
Indeed he did. He's cut through the field. I think he's just worked through the traffic. In fact, let's see if we can take a look at that. Sorry, I was trying to see if we can get the gaps back, but they do not want to work. It looks like he just kind of worked his way on through. So he's just muscled his way on through to 4th. And is running pretty well at the moment. So currently looking at Drew Lidke as the next victim on his list. And then it's Mo Islam, and then up to Ryan Cladwell, who's been leading this race. Not had anyone challenge him, but race still young. He's still got over 20 laps left to go. I'm trying to look back here. I have the intermediate gaps between the car, but I don't even know what the gaps are on my screen, so I'm not sure what's going on here. I did a full refire of ATV, that's why I cut to the B-roll for a second. And yeah, none of the gaps are coming up at all.
Well, we'll be in just as much a mystery as many of these drivers will be as far as pit strategy goes, but that's the fun part about these kind of simulated endurance races is with the pit stop, you really don't know where you're going to sit. So right now we have those 2 AOD purple cars with Caldwell and Islam at the front. And I think just looking down the quick list, Islam has got to be in a great spot. I think Welker's in a great spot. And Andra has really started to work his way forward with Hudson just behind. So those cars in 9th and 10th, keep a close eye on them. But Caldwell, with his lead that he has over his teammate in Mo Islam, is definitely going to be tough to catch for anybody because he's been pretty much picture perfect throughout this race. The question is, has his pace been as strong as theirs will be?
Yeah, I think Brian Chabelski ran into some trouble. He went from 2nd all the way back to, I think, around 10th when he came in. Also just saw some damage get fixed to his car, so I think he had a spot of trouble. So he's going to be able to get back in the pits, get a fast repair, and get the car back out on track. And notably, we're trying to look at... Oh, Syandra's already gotten on past. So we know Syandra is good till the end of the race as far as fuel is concerned. Everyone else in line should also be good unless they got back there due to damage. So still waiting on, I believe, the top 8 drivers in the running order to make their one and only pit stop for this race. And by the looks of it, I think this should be a pretty solid jump for Syandra because he spent about 24 seconds in the pits. You see him get very close to the wall and exit. And should be up there, I want to say, by almost 5 seconds good of Clydewell when he comes in.
Wow, that would be a really strong performance. You can see the gap that he's pulled out over Hudson, who is the car just behind. But Caldwell, in my opinion, has really done a fantastic job. That's 1st and 2nd on camera there. And they've really kind of gapped the field. But Caldwell is still checked out from Islam. There they are working their way through turns 7 and 8. But I think you got to stay the fast car on track is the 67 of Syandra, who sits 9th.
Also, Mitch Welker slowly closing in as well. Definitely don't want to keep him out of play. I think I'm curious between him and Syandra. I would say those two are probably the strongest cars out on track without any damage. So we'll see if he's got a good enough. Who's really got the better car between them? Look, also Drew Lidke in behind doing a pretty solid job. Ryan Plord almost, man, these guys are getting really close. I feel like they're getting closer to the wall as the run goes on. I think that's just the tires taking a bit of a beating.
Yeah, getting more and more comfortable with the space around you in these little spaceships. But I'm trying to look from where Welker was. He's not even in the same camera shot as Islam, let alone Caldwell. So even if he's really quick right now, he's got a really long way to go.
Yeah,
the cars in front are all lapped cars. I think Islam's all the way up into turn 6 right now.
Yeah, so here's Mitch Welker. Islam is right there, as you mentioned. Yep, heading to turn 6 in Cladwell. He's now just heading onto the back stretch. So it's about a 7 to 8 second gap from what I can tell from the math I'm doing right now. So that's the gap for Mitch Welker, about 8 seconds in behind. And
he's got,
based off the last lap time, let's actually take a look at their last lap times. Mitch Welker 111.9 for Cladwell was a 112.5, so closing in at around 0.6 a second a lap on the leader.
that would be close to good enough. We're about a third of the way through this race, 12 laps complete of 34, and all of these drivers have yet to complete their pit stop. This is the big question mark. Look at those lap times, 111.5, best lap of 4. Andra is going to be hard to stop this one.
Yeah, Andrew is running 4 tenths faster than Welker, and Welker again putting in some pretty solid lap times. But Andrew again was one of the fastest cars last race. Probably could have won it if he didn't run into didn't get caught up behind Alessandrini. Also didn't have that big off with 2 to go. So I'm sure he's going to be looking at redeeming himself here in this race if he can just keep it up. I mean, he's looking. It looks like all the cards are falling to his hands. He's just got to play them right, and really by play them right just mean don't hit anything.
I don't know. I think I just saw the back end start to slide a bit into turn 1 again. Yeah. I think I saw the wheel straighten up and him catch the car. So perhaps there's some consequences with driving the car as fast as it is for Andra. He might be so on the ragged edge that he's at the risk of stuffing it again in turn 1. He's got to be very careful about that.
Yeah, we're talking about, tires. You don't have to change them. They're endurance tires. They'll take the beating. That being said, this is a street course. They'll do a bit of a number on them, and if anything else they're going to get nice and hot, especially when you start to slide around a little bit. The more you slide around, the worse it's going to get. It's going to feel like the tires are going off quite a bit, so you definitely don't want to slide around too much on them. And Andrew, as you mentioned, just the back end's been getting out a little bit here and there.
Yeah, you really do have to be careful with them, and I think what tends to happen is when the car is full of fuel at the beginning of the race, tends to be pretty lethargic, and then at the end of the race, when you're empty on fuel, even if the tires are burnt up a little bit, the car is super fast. It's the middle of the race, so you have to be careful when the tires are starting to go away, but the car still has a bit of fuel in it, as we're now starting to see a big stream of pit stops start up.
Colin Daner, big off for him in turn 1, was running pretty well. He's going to come back out in 9th.
I wonder if he hit anything.
Oops. I don't think he did. Oh, he just went off into the corner. Yeah, he just missed the corner and went flying back. I can't actually get a camera angle because he's in a blind spot from the cameras. There he goes.
Yeah, good heads up again to just bail out if the car starts to go. You lose a heck of a lot less time than if you put it in the wall. But he's going to drop a number of positions.
Here's another battle going on. Andra picks up yet another driver up into 6th place now for the 67 machine. He's just picking him up and putting him down.
Going to open up the entry there into the hairpin and then just get the car nice and straight coming out of the front straightaway. He's going to motor away from the 38 of Rollveld and just leave him in the dust. So now he's up to 6th, got 5 more cars to pass if he wants to win this race, which he obviously does. But all 5 of those cars are way up the road. They all have pit stops to complete. And I think they're all in the danger zone of looking at the back of the 67 when they finish those stops.
Yeah, and I think Andrew's still on a good spot to be the leader, but that being said, again, they can't make any more mistakes. Still got 20 laps left to go. Oh, Cladwell, speaking of which, just a little bit of wall on the exit. Not too much, but that's getting a little bit too comfy with the track limits here.
He's maintaining the gap to his teammate. Mo Islam is 2 cars back. There's a lapped car between the 2 of them. There he is. And Mitch Welker is getting a little bit closer here and there, but not massive gains. So the top 3 kind of slowly coming together. It'd be interesting to see if they all stay out for a longer run. We now know that the pit window is most of the race. You could pit as early as maybe lap 5 or 6 and get away with it, which means that maybe even Alessandrini down there in 8th is good to go till the end, but probably, as you mentioned, at least a lap down.
Yeah, I'm trying to see for DJ. I literally can't figure out what lap he's on. I definitely think he's a lap down. Oh, you see Mo Islam get a piece of wall there. He's starting to struggle a little bit. Working out of the fountain, but yeah, for DJ, he's definitely at least one lap down. I can be sure of that. So he's not really going to gain any spots unless there's more attrition. But yeah, actually, speaking of attrition, other than the few incidents in the opening lap, the rest of the race has been pretty clean so far. I think we still got everyone that took the green flag. We still have, except for Zach Buchanan. He's called it a night.
Yeah, we still don't know what happened with Buchanan. He was sitting in the pit lane when we cut to somebody else and just happened to notice he was sitting there, and we don't know what the incident was to take the 40 car out. He's certainly a quicker car. Was really quick in the Lambos, but a little bit less of a factor here in the prototype, so that's unfortunate for him. But the field, what has been mostly a 30 to 35 cars, pretty small here tonight at 18 or 19 circulating. Watching Unterkoffler there in 16th.
Yeah, remember he was up on his roof on the opening lap. Had to come in, get the car fixed, get back out there, got a new car, and still hasn't really been able to move up due to the tow, costing him quite a bit of time, but is still at least, on the bright side, is at least up one spot from where he started due to the invert. But I don't
Formula E style.
I don't think he'll have a lot of chance to get back get back up down the order. It took me a second to get what you're referencing. I kind of missed the fact that they gave them more battery. I love just seeing them just jump out of the car and jump right in the next one. And just the panic with that.
I love anything that separates something from normal. And the fan boost, all that stuff is kind of cool. We don't have that quite here, but
yeah,
Unterkoffler looks like he might be struggling with a little bit of damage too. He's pulling over now. Car looks pretty pushy.
Yeah, when pulled over to let teammate on by. I'm trying to see which teammate that is.
Oh, that's Drew Lidke that was spun out in turn 8 coming onto the back straightaway. He was maybe in the wall. I'm not quite sure. It's easy to let the back end get away from you there. It looks like he just did that. Yeah, the car was spinning when he put the power down.
Yeah, that's a.
What was that? Sandra that barely squeezed through.
This is a really tough place. Oh boy, that's a tough place to get turned back around, and luckily Lidke was able to get turned around without taking out anyone else. Was very close to it, especially almost taking out Ty Andrew, who again we believe is to be a car in one of the strongest positions at the moment. Slowly moved his way up into 5th after starting in 7th place.
Yeah, that was wild. And the car that we were trying to figure out who it was is actually Chris Hudson, who's again a kind of quiet force. He's second in the championship, but it was a teammate letting him by because he's a lap down. So Hudson is up in the top 7, 7th right now. It was his teammate letting him through.
Is that a teammate car?
I can't tell. They have similar coloration, but they might not be.
No, I don't think. Oh no, they're not. Yeah, I remember Chris Hudson being with Can-Am. The car. It looks similar, like the back. Like I think it's a line. I think it's a line or a tiger that they normally have on their cars. It looks like the P2 symbol on the wing that the P2 cars normally have. That's why I thought it was a teammate car. Also, the sun playing tricks on my eyes here. It starts to set here, Long Beach. Beautiful sun though.
It is beautiful, especially on that chrome. So. Not a teammate, but a gentlemanly move nonetheless for Chris Hudson to get a nice door open for him to continue his charge. He's trying to keep up with Syandra, but he's not been able to. Andra's just kind of left him in the dust and is way up the front straightaway down into turn 1 now.
Yeah, and again, really curious to see where Andrew is going to get put out. We kind of know what's going to happen, but again, has to make sure he makes it to the end of this race without pushing. We saw him, definitely found the limit in the last race, and also I think had a little mini heart attack a few moments ago, almost hitting a car backing up.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to just be saying a little prayer or two, just hope that nothing else, no other surprises come his way near the end of this race. Look at Mitch Welker catching up to Mo Islam. This is going to be a battle for 2nd place in a little bit. Islam trying to get past a lap car.
Oh, and this lap car is not having any of it. The 12 of Shabelski is... it's hard to say. I don't know that they lose a lap on pit cycle. So if Shabelski's completed a pit stop, I think he is still genuinely almost a lap down from these cars that have not completed their pit stops. But Islam not getting any of it, and he smartly pits right away to try to get out of this traffic and leaves Mitch Welker to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that Welker didn't come in. I guess maybe Welker saw Islam come in and he decided to do the opposite and stay out. Again, trying to get a benefit from it, just a difference in strategy. So Islam going to come in, pit stop going to be about 42 to 44 seconds, going to cost these guys on pit lane, more or less. So, again, looking at Andrew, this is where Andrew is heading through turn 1. Cladwell coming out of turn 5. So, not too much of time separating these two.
And now Welker is trying to let the 12 Shabelski know. Shabelski lets him go. So that actually might mean enough for Welker. That was a smart move to stay out. I think he was kind of thinking about coming in. He was in the middle of the track coming out of the hairpin and kind of juked back and forth. But I think that quick exchange there, the lapped car letting him through, will mean that he might have the opportunity to leapfrog Islam in the pit lane.
Eric Brown's having a little bit of trouble down into turn 1, as have many drivers coming down to this part of the racetrack. We'll take a look at what happened to him. I think this is also just another descented a little bit too hard, and I think this is probably the 3rd or 4th car we've seen do this. Whoa, right into the camera. So Eric Brown's going to continue on. I don't think lost too many spots. I think lost maybe 2 or 3, but the car is going to still be in one piece. Cladwell is going to be the one that comes in. Welker stays out.
So this is interesting. Welker is basically inherited on an open track. Caldwell, for some reason, felt inclined to pit, and I think it might be mostly because we're about halfway through. Maybe he's just on a fixed strategy. I'm going to pit halfway. But Welker, I wouldn't be surprised to see him stay out for maybe even another 5 laps.
No, I would. I see quite a bit of clean track for Welker up ahead, so I mean, might as well stay out. There's not really much incentive to pit, I would think. Oh, the gaps are magically back. Hallelujah. I don't know why. That made no sense.
Well, now we've
done nothing the entire
yeah.
Ever since the tournament started, it magically fixed itself.
Well, and knowing now that Andra has completed the 40-second pit stop and Welker hasn't, that's disaster for Welker. Look at that, less than 10 seconds, which means he's going to be behind Andra to the tune of something like 30 if things stay the way they're fixed.
Yeah, I figured he's going to lose quite a bit. Not that much, though. I thought it was going to be more in the tune of maybe 20-second deficit. But yeah, for Welker, I mean, it might not be an ideal finish for him, but he still should finish somewhere near the top 5. So he's still looking at a solid day. I think also wants to get a few laps led to boot. Ryan Plord is the next car in second place. We saw him get in trouble with Alessandrini earlier, and there is Cy Andra running in third. Flying into the, almost said the hairpin, into the fountain with Ryan Plord up ahead. I'm curious what Andra's going to do. He's just going to wait for Plord to come to the pits or try to make the pass happen on track. As far as cars that Andra's battling, if I'm not mistaken, the next car that I knew was good is Chris Hudson, and Hudson actually is back in the pits.
So he is this his first pit stop or his second?
It should be his second. I know it does say 1, but I did reset the ticker. I remember Hudson was good. He was running directly in behind. Oh, I think he had a drive-through. Oh, no, he did get service. I'm pretty sure he came in earlier in the race, because I remember seeing everyone behind Andra at one point was pit before I reset the ticker, and Hudson was one of them, so I'm not sure what happened there with Hudson, but back in 11th place.
This will not be necessarily the happiest place for him to end up because, again, he is second in the championship on consistency. He hasn't necessarily been like a top podium driver every single round, but he has completed every single round nice and solid. 11th, I think, would be his worst finish. Alessandrini again collected.
DJ around. This is a very, as you mentioned, this is an awkward part of the racetrack. I think looking at the relative, found a place to get out. Ooh, that's a surprise.
So tight, and that's one of the things. I mean, here in road racing, you tend to have pretty good control over the circumstances around you against oval racing, where you can just get collected and it's no fault of your own. Except for street racing, it can just get you. Interestingly, though, this time Alessandrini was the one that got collected instead of being the collector.
Yeah, I think Welker was one of the cars that passed on by. I'm pretty sure. I want to just take a look at this onboard with what happened, because that was a really close hit. Yeah, I think it was Welker that was about it, but you're going to see how quick things happen here at Long Beach. He was flying into the corner, and there's a car.
Wow.
boy. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure he's happy that to get through there in one piece. But I can't express to you. I think it's happened to all of us at one point. Come through a corner, see all of a sudden see a car, and your heart drops for a second, and then you hopefully magically make it through. Doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always. So Welker, yeah, but I forgot he was even the leader. He had inherited the lead. One of the only cars that has not pitted yet.
And look who's back down on pit lane. So Andrew. So I think what happened is I think that pit stop earlier, what we thought was good enough for them to make it to the end, those stops for I think Andrew and Hudson might have been for damage, and I think they weren't able to make it to the end. So we thought Andrew was in a really good spot, but not so much. Gonna come back out in 7th.
Harry on the pit exit. I was a little surprised if that was going to work out with how early he had pit. A lot of times, again, the pit window tends to be maybe a third of the race in, and he had pit on lap 5, so that would have been a massive effort to make that work. Or maybe this is just a slightly shorter race, so all of a sudden Welker's looking like he's in a much better position, as I think, is it Darling is the leader that has pitted.
Yeah, Darling has definitely come down to pit lane.
Everybody else has stayed out so far, so now it's the gap between Darling and Welker that Welker has to worry about.
Yeah, Darling came in about 15 laps ago. Came in around lap 10. I want to say that's good. That sounds more reasonable, as I think one of the AOD cars just got a little piece of the wall on the hairpin. So Mo Islam right in behind Cladwell, pretty much as they're running before. Drew Lidke, he's in the pits getting service to his machine, pretty much on schedule with everyone else. Now leaves Mitch Welker and Derek Rolandfield in the 38. He's working his way on through in 2nd place.
And remind me, has the 38 pit yet, or is he also on the long strategy as Welker dives to the pit lane?
38 is still yet to come down pit lane, so Welker's come in, but the gap between the leader and Paul Darling over here, 42 seconds. It's going to be very close.
It is going to be very close. We know Darling is really quick, so he's going to be looking to rebound from that incident in race number 1. Again, he was a driver that got collected from somebody else making a mistake. Maybe this is the redemption that he wants to finally get a result, a top podium. He's going to come out very close to Welker as Welker sits in the pit lane with nothing to do but wait and watch that gap tumble.
Here comes Welker out of the pits, and he gets past pace car. There's still quite a bit of pit lane there. You can see the cones just in the distance. Darling, meanwhile, flying down the front straightaway here. This is going to be very close. Welker still not out of the pits. Will finally get out, and there you'll see coming flying out of the bend. There is Paul Darling, and we got a battle on our hands.
Well, I watched this pit exit. He's got to go all the way past the red line and then turn in. That was very close. He might have actually flirted too much with that. We'll have to see if he lifts or maybe gets a black flag.
No, you have to come back down if you cut that. If you don't exit properly, it's a trip back down pit lane. So Welker, we'll see in a lap or two's time if he found that a little bit too aggressive. But he was definitely flirting with the limit there. And in some cases it can be lenient, but in some cases it's not. And I'm pretty sure here it's a little bit more on the strict side.
Yeah.
And as far as hitting that line and how many tires you need to have actually cross the blue line. You need to come all the way out, past that blue line, then turn in. Some guys try to cut it a little bit close, as we saw in the case with Welker. Darling, I'm sure he's going to be hoping that that was the case where he cut it too aggressively and will be able to easily take over the spot.
Well, either way, we have a race on our hands. He's certainly within drafting distance, and I think the 155 is super, super quick. They can't take too long about it because Mo Islam is still in this one, too. The 206 is only 3 seconds back of this battle. There he is. He can see him. And to your point, yes, it can maybe feel a little bit lenient, but we're in the digital world. It's either yes or no. Things are completely digital here. It's not a race control person making a call on their opinion. If you cut it, you cut it.
Yeah, no, you definitely do. It's just a matter of finding that limit, which I don't think I have found because I've never really tried to take that pit exit too as aggressively as that. It's just not. I don't feel it's worth the pit road penalty. But Welker saw a chance to keep Darling in behind, and that might have been worth it. And he stayed out, so I want to say he's good. You do have to serve a black flag within about 3 laps time. And I imagine he would have served it by now. So for now, it looks like Welker's in the good. And indeed, sorry, I'm trying to think of the driver. Roland Field has come in. He's back out in 8th place. He now has surrendered the lead back to Welker. So this is the battle for the lead we're looking at.
Yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he did at least keep the center point of the car in the pit lane until it was done. So I think he did dodge it, but if the 77 dives to pit lane in the next 2 laps, we know why. But check out how fast he looks. He's pulled a couple car lengths on Paul Darling and is going to be really quick off the hairpin this time through as well. See him swing a little bit away from the wall, avoid the bumps, and get a run. The problem is Darling's got the draft. He's going to suck up to the back of that car every single lap down this front straightaway for the next 7 times.
Yeah, and Darling also was a bit pretty aggressive coming out of the hairpin too. Left some smoke from the tires coming out of that hairpin, trying to get as much of a run back on Welker. And do you think that Darling may have some time to play with here now that he's in the draft? You think maybe he could try to, just take it a little easy and focus on the runs out of the hairpin? Or do you think he needs to start trying to pass him elsewhere?
I think he needs to take it where he can get it. You saw Welker go majorly sideways, hopping the curbs out of turn 5, now down into turn 6. I think the realistic passing opportunities with as fast as these cars are, and barring a mistake from Welker, are basically down this back straightaway into turn 9 and on the front straightaway at turn 1. But Welker is looking like he's starting to feel the pressure quite a bit. That back end of that car is all over the place.
We'll see how it's going to handle. Again, Welker has to manage his nerves here to keep the 155 at Darling. It's effectively a 2-car race. Mo Islam's definitely there, though, if these two drivers get into each other. Not completely out of the question, just in case. I mean, things are tight here at Long Beach, and it's fairly easy for 2 cars to get into each other if they're not careful. So Islam could be there to pick up the pieces, but is not a direct factor at the moment. It's pretty much between these two.
Darling just got absolutely shackled by the traction control coming off of the hairpin. He grabbed a big bump on the exit, and you see that gap opened up like 3 car lengths coming off the hairpin, where Welker got a nice clean exit. So what had been the closest they were together now turns into almost the furthest they were apart, and Darling's got to get back to work. And Islam is not really catching them, so they still have a bit of breathing room.
Wow, Darling took a lot of curb out in turn 5. And that's another place I want to be a little bit careful, because you can definitely get a slowdown if you take too much curb there. Glad they also fixed it too. I remember when they first released the track, you can cut that corner all day and it wouldn't give you anything, but then they actually put a proper slowdown there if you take too much curb. You can still take a decent chunk out, but it used to be before you could just completely skip the sawtooth curving that's there.
I loved cutting it, but that's just me. I'm a broken human. Darling is really struggling this lap. I think he center punched the curb at 5 that you're talking about a little too much and dropped off the back. He closes up nice and tight on the hairpin, but that's just kind of natural ebb and flow, and you see it grow back out. But lap traffic's going to start to take effect. I think, is that Eric Brown that they're catching up to?
Indeed it is. Brown, last car on the lead lap. I have a feeling might yield to these drivers because he's got 19 seconds up to the next guy ahead, so I think he might try. Hopefully, I think we'll try to stay out of this battle. I imagine Darling's kind of hoping he's a factor. Help them bunch back up just a little bit more, maybe give potentially the move that Darling needs to get past Welker if they catch him in the wrong place.
Yeah, especially in that first sector, it's really tough to make anything happen. If you don't get the move into turn 1, you're kind of stuck until turn 5. And hopefully for Welker, and he doesn't want that to happen, for Darling, he's hoping it does happen.
And Mitch Welker started all the way back in 21st. If I'm not mistaken, finished second or third. No, finished third in the first race. Worked his way all the way through the order back up into first. So he's looking at a very nice points haul coming out of this round. Actually, how is he doing in the championship?
Just getting back to my tab, I was also curious about that, and my computer doesn't want to agree with me. But either way, for surviving basically last to first at Long Beach is a feat. That's a really incredible drive, so good on him either way. He does sit 5th in the points, and in front of him are Alessandrini, who's having a bad night. Hudson is kind of in this one. Darling is the one he's got to worry about. He sits 3rd.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to want to let Darling get some nice solid points for finishing in first, especially when he can have his say in the matter. Although that lap car still hasn't given way, Welker stuck in behind.
This is a pretty good spot, though. They didn't catch him until about turn 5, and now he's got a good opportunity.
Welker gets into the lap car! Darling works his way on through. Welker around, though. Oh, and Mo Islam going to get involved as well.
Really unfortunate to see. That was just not on as far as I'm concerned. But now all of a sudden Darling gets a big gift, and both second and third place cars are stuck dealing with the consequences of traffic.
Yeah, so I went a little bit too far back on this one. We'll take a look here. Welker caught up. This is again Eric Brown in the 56 that I'm sure was kind of hoping that he would yield at some point just pull off to the side. Again, we mentioned Brown had nothing he was fighting for in this scenario. Came out of here, missed the corner. Welker wasn't expecting him to obviously break like that coming out of the corner, and nowhere for him to go.
Sure, and it
was from Mo Islam.
Was a genuine mistake. Nothing necessarily completely wrong with what Brown did, but he did make the mistake and ended up having to check up. Big damage on the front of Welker's car, and I think Welker was in a great position to defend the win on that one. I don't know, was the damage on Islam's car enough that he came in, but check this out. Andra, second place with 2 pit stops on this race.
Yeah, I know, and we thought Andrew would actually... We went from thinking Andrew was going to win this race to being kind of out of it, maybe not even really being too much of a factor. It's a pretty big gap, almost 5 seconds back from Paul Darling, and Darling, I can imagine, is putting down some decent laps, at least enough to finish this race. He only got 3 laps to go, but Andrew, I think, is going to be in a lot better position than we at least thought. I'm not sure if Andrew how Andrew thought about this race, because, yeah, again, I do want to double-check with him if he did have to make 2 pit stops. I'm pretty sure he did.
I suspect he's salvaging, but I think... regardless, unless they were within a couple tenths of each other, Paul Darling's no slouch either. So even if Andrew's the fastest car on the track, he would need to be within the drafting distance, I think, to really make it realistic to catch Darling at this point.
Also, I just realized I've lost the gaps yet again. So, I don't know, Ticker's not being cooperative tonight. I guess it doesn't matter at this point. We had it for, I think, a decent amount of time where it actually mattered. We were able to reorient ourselves, because, man, is it hard to commentate when you don't know how far people are from each other.
It is true. The other driver having a killer championship night with Alessandrini more or less out of this race off the lead lap. So Darling's having a great championship night. He's a factor, and so is Carter Kundinger. Look at that, the 0-2. He is 4th in the championship and is going to finish 4th as far as things are concerned for tonight, with a number of factors around him having terrible nights. He could be in a great spot as long as he hangs on to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he keeps driving like the way he is, he may not so much have a good night. He's got to just hang on here, and again, solid points haul in 4th. After what happened to him on the opening up, I'm actually surprised to see him anywhere near the front of the field, so this is a solid recovery for the 0-2 machine. And for DJ, too, he's actually had to come back in to get a splash of gas. I think was just short of where he needed, so he's going to be back down pit lane, get back out. He's been able to pass some guys, notably Mitch Welker and Kyle Lamb, put himself in at least 14th, so, I mean, he definitely was able to salvage something out of this night.
He was the points leader coming in by a pretty good margin. So Alessandrini, Hudson are the top 2. They both have had rough goes of it on this one. Darling is in a good spot. Kundinger also well. Welker was until a couple laps ago, unfortunately, and now we get to watch the 155 try to bring this thing home, but this has been turned on its head too many times. I don't want to give it to anybody yet.
It really has been. It could change in a matter of seconds, especially as you saw what happened to Mitch Welker. And man, that just hurts to see that happen. He's having such a good run, was in a really solid place. Played the strategy beautifully, got himself in a fantastic spot. We saw him come out of the pits, just slide in front of the 155, timed it perfectly. Unfortunately, taken out with a lap, being involved with a lap car. It's going to put him all the way back in 16, but one man's trash race is another man's treasure for Paul Darling. Works through the final few corners, will work through the hairpin for the final time. And as he gets back on the power, nice and slowly, he'll come and we'll see the checkered flag. It'll be Paul Darling that will take the checkered flag and the win here in race number 2 at Long Beach.
It's a great effort. Second win of the season, but the first one came in the sprint at Daytona, so this one's probably going to feel like a little more grand, winning the feature at Long Beach. Second place for Cy Andra, having made 2 stops through the pit lane. Mo Islam third after contact with another car, Mitch Welker, on that third to last lap, and then Kundinger and Plord rounding out the top 5. A good effort from Plord after I think he was the car that ended up in the incident with Alessandrini that took Alessandrini out of the race, so he held on.
Yeah, waiting for the final finishers now coming on through. Drew Lidke, he's going to round out our top 10. Cody Meadows, he's also working his way back. He's the last car on the lead lap. But, man, that race was an eventful one. Not maybe directly with this, actually. Those were some really good battles in there, especially towards the later part stages. But, man, there's a lot of different leaders and a lot of drama going on in this race for sure.
Yeah, attrition in a totally different kind. We have seen a decent amount of attrition here and there throughout this season, but this one, man, really lots of different phases through that race.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of it all, as the dust settles, it'll be Paul Darling again up near the top of the standings. And actually, has he gotten any other wins in this series so far?
He did, yeah. He picked up the first win of the season in the sprint race at Daytona, but has since had really rough go of it. So I think that this is a bit of a breakthrough for him to finally be able to deep breath and say, okay, I got another one. This wasn't all going south for the rest of the year for me.
It actually was not really in contention for the win. Was definitely, I think, in a place for a solid finish, but we weren't eyeing on him for a win until the later stages, especially as you saw Welker come on through as a favorite as well. But Gunnar was able to make it out on top. Cy Andrew going to be disappointed. It had 2 runs for second place. One actually went to fruition. Was able to finish second in this one. Moa is also quietly picking up a 3rd place.
Another driver who's been pretty consistent, but Kundinger, a great championship round. Looking down, it's really a bunch of drivers that we've seen contact spins all over the place a bit. Isaac Snyder, I think, was a relatively clean night, but we saw Roveld had issues in the 38 car. Lidke had issues in the 121. Trying to identify the drivers who didn't have issues, and it's a little bit tough. Long Beach throws people for a loop.
Yeah, we saw quite a few on the opening lap, which I do want to take a chance to take a look at because there was quite a few stuff. Still, I need to figure out what happened to Zach Buchanan. It's been like the mystery haunting us this entire race. We do have Mo Islam down in the waiting room, so we'll drag him up here. Hey, Mo Islam, do you have a copy? Or not? I guess we don't have a copy. Had him for a second. Okay, he's back. Let's see if we get him now. Mo Islam, you got a copy?
Hello?
Yeah. Hi.
Oh, sorry, I had to fix my audio setting here.
No problem. Take your time, man. All right, you have it all set? Still making adjustments. So I think actually we'll go down to Cyandra first, and we'll talk to Cyandra first. Hey, Cyandra, you got a copy?
I do. Hey.
Hey, how's it going, man? We saw you had a up and down night. Also, just want to add before anything else, we were a little bit confused because I had to reset our scoring midway through the race. Did you have to pit twice?
I did not. It looked like I had to pit twice, though.
Okay, so I guess if you want to explain that for us, because I think we were a little bit confused as to where you were standing in the race.
Because I went a lap down on the heat race, unfortunately, because there wasn't enough time to do end-of-line penalties at the start, all the people who were laps down had to start from the pit lane, which is why it looked like I pitted twice.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So, okay, so we weren't as much of a deficit that we thought, because we thought at one point that you were in contention for the win, because I saw that you've come down the pits, and I wasn't able to see, because our data, our timing scoring was messing up a little bit, we weren't able to see when you actually came on down, so I thought you were all good until the end, and you did actually have to make your actual stop, but through the cloud and smoke, you were able to actually come back home in second place. Were you expecting that in the future?
Oh, absolutely not second, because I definitely knew I had a top 10, maybe a top 5 if I played the strategy right, and honestly, I got really lucky with the way people either wrecked in front of me or pitted in front of me. I had clear track the entire race, it felt like, so I could just push every single lap. And it worked out in the end. But race 1 was certainly not the case.
Yeah, no, we saw, unfortunately, what happened in race 1, but definitely some solid speed, and definitely looked like you got some. I believe you missed the last round at Laguna Seca?
That's correct. I had to prepare for Sports Car Open, so I wasn't able to do that last race.
Okay, can we expect to see you for the rest of the season?
For the most part, yes. Paul has dragged me out here more than once, and I enjoy it. So you'll see me back here. But it's a great league, honestly. It's a lot of fun. It's not something I put a lot of what's the word? Prep isn't the right word, but a lot of expectation into. But I always seem to have a lot of fun. So definitely something I'm going to come back to.
Yep, definitely enjoying yourself, and definitely looking forward to seeing you out on the track. Congratulations on your second place finish.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to catch up to Mo Islam. And Mo, you actually ran a really consistent race for the most part. You started up in 12, moved yourself up pretty early in the running, and pretty much just stay there for the rest of the race.
Yeah, I mean, I've been practicing this track with various cars, but I really like it, so consistency was the key here. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, definitely a solid run for you. Any other tracks looking down the rest of the schedule that you particularly got your eye on as another shot for maybe a podium, maybe even a win?
Road Atlanta is a strong track for me, so is Mid-Ohio, so we'll see. A Spa as well.
All right, well, looking forward to seeing you perform at those tracks, Mo. Thanks for talking to us.
Yes, thank you, guys.
All right, and moving on to last but certainly not least, Paul Darling. And Paul, no offense, I'm actually a bit surprised to see you in victory lane because we saw quite a few different cars come up and down the order, and through the end of it all, you're fighting with Mitch Welker there at the end.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be at the front there either. Clearly, I'm disappointed again in my pace compared to DJ and Sai. Still a little bit off them, but I feel really bad for Mitch. What happened with the laugh traffic at the end there? That was really unlucky for him.
Yeah, and speaking of Mitch, too, we saw you're stuck in behind. We saw passing, especially the leading car in the group, can be a little bit tricky. You have that front stretch to help you out, but other than that, there were some few limited options. Did you think, if Mitch didn't have an incident, do you think you would have still had a shot at him, or do you think it might have been a little too hard to overcome, especially considering how fast Mitch was throughout the race?
Yeah, Mitch was fast in all the right places, I think. There's no way to get a run, especially when you're in the draft and you run out of gearing going down when you try to get a run. So there was probably no way I was going to get him unless he made a mistake there.
All right. Well, on that note, Paul, congratulations on your win. Hopefully it's, well, I shouldn't say the first thing, it's your second win, so hopefully you get to have some more coming to you for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you very much, guys.
Alright, and with that, I guess we'll take a final look at our race results here for just a second. And Paul Darling coming out on top. Andra Mo is on your top three. I'm trying to also look down the order down the rest of the field. A lot of upsets, really, with some big names having big problems.
Yeah, I think that the number of names that are, the number of drivers who have had a close to perfect season is really whittling down. It's almost down to none as we get done with the fourth round here for the LazyRocket SCRS Prototype Challenge. And looking down the list of our rounds to go, Road America, Mid-Ohio, Watkins Glen, Road Atlanta, and then we cross the pond over to Monza, Spa, and Le Mans. And I think the closer we get to Europe and the further away from the US we get, the more this is going to get mixed up because different drivers prefer different tracks. Obviously, this being a mostly US-based series, we're going to get a lot of familiarity with those tracks, but those final rounds really going to get interesting.
Yeah, definitely will. And I mean, especially, you talk about going to Europe, it's essentially kind of home for these cars. It's again, they're called Le Mans prototypes for a reason, running a lot of the European tracks for most of the season. So it'll be nice to see them head back there, especially at tracks like Spa. We've seen how effective the draft is. You can imagine these guys are going to be rocketing down the Camel Straight, probably 3. Some might even try 4 wide heading down there.
Yeah, lots of room from wall to wall there, but really good to see a couple of drivers who have had some frustrating rounds kind of break through again, Paul Darling being one of them. A couple of drivers who have consistently been strong performers. Heartbreak at Long Beach. They're going to be looking to shake this one when we go up to Wisconsin at Road America next week.
Yeah, and actually just want to take a quick look at what happened with Zach Buchanan. He actually didn't even start the race. He just sat in the pits and didn't go. I'm not sure if he had something come up. I hope everything is okay for him. So he did not start the race, so that's what happened to him. So I guess there's not much to look at towards the end. But with that, I think it'd be a good time to sign out for tonight. It was a great race. Thanks, Tom, for being in the booth with me. My name is Fiona Kuhn, and we'll be signing out for tonight. Thank you for watching.